know that, Myra. Let me bring in Dr. Catherine Schmerling, psychologist who has a background in social work, early childhood education. Dr. Schmerling, let's talk about the impact. A child is in a home, is in a situation where there is domestic violence. And let's say, okay, the child is not being abused his or herself directly or physically. But let's talk about the impact of just being in that household where you've got a man beating on mom, a father beating on mom.
The impact for a child is devastating. There is no way that a child will emerge from a home in which domestic violence is at the forefront and the center, and that child will be okay. The child bears the burden of having his mother having his mother beaten up by someone else. First of all, in this case, the child was the male figure in the household. This other guy comes in and then wants to become the male figure and is basically fighting for power with a little child. What kind of lessons does that teach a child? What kind of effect will that have on a child? A child who observes abuse by a man from his mother will more than likely abuse other women, and thus the cycle is reiterated and repeated because domestic violence is a repetitive cycle.
Our conversation continues here, and it's an important one. We're talking about domestic violence, and how about the children who get caught in the middle of this? What can we do to protect them? How can a mom get out of that situation and help her kids? Dr. Schmerling, how do we uncover, how do we reveal, how do we find children who are in these situations, and how do we save them? To me, that it seems to be such a challenge here because the nature of domestic violence, it's happening behind closed doors. The abusers do it to an extent so no one will find out. The victims are sometimes and many times afraid to speak out, and the children are caught in the middle. What can we do?
That's a very, very good question, and one that we need as a society to answer so this doesn't happen again. There has to be a little bit more transparency and less shame in talking about domestic violence, and also the generational quality of domestic violence, that it doesn't only affect those people that are directly involved, but it also has collateral damage on future generations because, as I said before, it is a repetitive cycle, and this will happen over and over again. And people will not talk about it unless it becomes more transparent. Perhaps in schools, there should be groups for people, like people going through a divorce. There's something called banana splits, in which children going through a divorce can talk in a very safe environment about how they feel about things. Why not do that with domestic abuse and violence so that there is some place that these children can actually tell people and they won't get into trouble? The problem with children is not a problem, but they're trying to protect their mother or trying to protect someone, so they don't want to talk about it because they don't want to also get their mother into more trouble because she has been beaten or she has been abused by other people. So it's a very complex problem, but one that needs to be opened up and more transparent, and perhaps the schools can begin to do that, and certainly with media. And you guys are in a wonderful position to open up the idea that it is okay and it is a moral imperative to be able to protect our children.
Myra, is there anything that our system can do better? Dr. Schmerling, I think about the children, you know, at different ages, obviously they're comprehending different aspects of what is actually going on. You know, for a 2-year-old, much different than an 11-year-old who was there trying to defend his mom. And I'm wondering, how do we get through to the children that, and do you think there's an educational process maybe that should be part of what we do in school, what we teach kids, that, hey, if this is happening, this isn't okay, you can speak out about it? Is that where we have to reach these children?
Absolutely. There needs to be an educational process, just the same way that 30 years ago people didn't know that smoking caused cancer, and people now talk about it, and people are aware of it, and people do something about it. We can't get any change unless the whole situation becomes more transparent. And there is a way that starts in the school system in the concept of what a bully is. A bully is the same thing as someone who is a violent abuser, an emotional and physical abuse for a woman or a man, but that's what bullying is. So if there is a way out of bullying and to make bullying more transparent, and what happens when you stop bullying, then people become more responsible to the victim, which needs to be, as I said, more transparent. We need to talk about it. Just the same way that we have solved a lot of problems. Make it transparent, but there also has to be a support system for the person that is abused, because that person does not want to go back to the same situation. So it's really a three-pronged approach. It's a family approach. It's the front of it is the child and possibly placing the child in a safer situation. And then working with a person that's been abused. So it's complex, but we have to start somewhere because this is so prevalent and we need to save these children. We need to help these children so that they don't feel as though they have to protect their parents. Their job is to be a child.
Yeah, wouldn't that be nice if children could just be children? Dr. Smerling, always great to have you on the program. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Myra Spearman, founder, executive director of the National Domestic Violence Registry. Thank you so much for joining us with your perspective and the great work that you're doing with your organization. Renee Sandler, Beth Karras are going to stay with us because we've got another story to talk about.